frankly, with progressives like this, who needs enemies? Pramila Jayapal, who is the chairwoman of the Progressive Caucus, which is a joke. They let anybody in, including Shontel Brown, who defeated Nina Turner. Pretty soon they'll be letting, who knows who they'll let in. But she went on because she, instead of just owning the egg on her face for folding like a cheap tent and saying, actually we'll vote for this bipartisan infrastructure deal without the 3.5 trillion Build Back Better in tow. So she gave away all the leverage as soon as there was even a little pressure from the Democratic Party and media. Instead of owning the egg on her face, she's going on cheering this Inflation Reduction Act and saluting President Manchin. Colin, let's take a look.
I've always given the president credit for coming in with a vision that was big, bold, populist, and being willing to fight for it. And I would argue that the Progressive Caucus was probably his best friend on Capitol Hill in terms of selling this to the country, pushing for it, making sure we got legislation drafted and passed in the House. Many of those pieces that are in the Inflation Reduction Act came directly from the piece of legislation we drafted in the House. And as for Senator Manchin, I think it's a great thing that he was able to get to a place where he could be comfortable with moving some of these critical issues along and that he didn't give up. I give him a lot of credit for that. And I'm happy to have him in the Democratic family.
Steve, will you allow me to rant? If somebody lights your house on fire, do you invite them over for dinner the next night? Are you fucking out of your mind, Pramila Jayapal? Are you out of your mind? You're Biden's best friend? What did she say? His progressive vision? That vision of, I'm going to abandon a $15 minimum wage as soon as I fucking sit down for dinner in the White House? I'm going to abandon a public option, which was a fucking joke anyway? I'm going to abandon $2,000 checks. Just kidding. Police reform. We're going to give police $32 billion more. Medicare for all. Maybe in 20 years. And Joe Manchin, who, by the way, I was just on the road. That's the beauty. And thank you to the Status Coup members and viewers who fund our on-the-ground reporting. There are families pulling kids out of Little League right now because they don't have that child tax credit anymore because of salute your fucking Manchin. There are families that literally are having to ration medicine for their kids or not get groceries. I spoke with them on the road. So this Joe Manchin is in your Democratic family. He's the reason that the child tax credit expired because you wouldn't go on offense. You wouldn't actually hold the hostage. I mean, it's just pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. And you want to know something? To be honest with you, I tweeted about it earlier, and people said, well, Jordan, if we got rid of her as the chair, who would replace her? There's nobody better. Who's going to go in there? AOC? Rashida Tlaib? Just won re-election? Ilhan Omar? None of these people are willing to actually hold up political hostage. To be clear, YouTube, I'm not talking about a real hostage. This is an analogy, political. It's unbelievable. You are crediting someone who, as part of a historic climate provision, just forced through a dangerous natural gas pipeline called the Mountain Valley Pipeline that Biden isn't mentioning that. Schumer allowed this. Colin, if we could show it, activists got arrested today outside Chuck Schumer's office in New York because the Mountain Valley Pipeline and more drilling was snuck into this deal. Let's play that, Colin.
Senator Schumer, you have personally expressed support of the fight against the North Brooklyn Pipeline by showing up to our rally in the past. But passing this legislation shows us your true face. This side deal with Manchin endangers our fight and numerous pipeline fights across the states and indigenous territories. You cannot say you support us and then sign a bill that would take away the voice of the public, get more environmental protections, and make it easier to pass more fossil fuel projects.
And several activists were arrested outside Chucky Sleaze's office today. Your thoughts, because honestly, I've never gotten into Fraud Squad and all that because I'm a journalist and I'm not going to do that. But at this point, I don't really know how much stock you could put in. I'm not saying don't vote, but what I am saying is the progressives in Congress ain't going to do shit for you.
Well, I've been extraordinarily disappointed with everybody, MMTers, progressives, whoever, that have celebrated this quote unquote Inflation Reduction Act. Just start there before we even get down into the AOCs and squads and stuff like that. This thing should not be called the Inflation Reduction Act. It should be called the Deficit Reduction Act, because what it is doing is literally, number one, reducing the deficit. Reducing the deficit is austerity. Austerity is murder, because when you take money out of the economy, you make it so that the people at the bottom really starve and suffer. Okay. So that's what your Inflation Reduction Act does. It's really the Deficit Reduction Act. Okay. Number one. Number two, it puts out like freaking electric vehicle credits out years ahead. It puts solar panel credits out years ahead. Most of these things are things that don't help anybody today. None of this is about inflation. The fact is that you've had massive amounts of gouging from the rich. They've already paid back the rich by raising interest rates, because rich people get money from interest rate hikes. That's what it is. It's about, how do we get rich people more money? Let's raise interest rates. There you go. So everything about this sucks big time. And so pardon me to anybody out there who had the audacity to carry that blue water for this bullshit bill. Number one, Build Back Better sucked to begin with, but this Inflation Reduction Act is putrid, and it gives a false positive that we've done something about the environment, that we've done something about inflation. The whole idea of negotiating a few prices on pharmaceuticals is a crock of shit, because you realize if Medicare could negotiate with some of the pharmaceutical prices, it could negotiate all the pharmaceutical prices. And why does that matter? Because when the government pays a price for anything, because it is the monopolist of the money creation, it is literally the price setter by doing that. So the money that the federal government pays is the inflation rate. So if government refuses to pay higher rates, then you don't have inflation. You have price gouging or a relative value story. So I'm trying to tell you that everything about this bill, everything about it sucks. So to see, now let's flash forward to all the people singing the praises about it. Pramila Jayapal singing the praises about it. This is about a November election. You're going to hear nothing but glorious things about the Deficit Reduction Act of 2022. Nothing but glory they're going to sing about it, but it's garbage. It not only doesn't really help the environment, it doesn't help inflation, and it's definitely going to be more pain for the poor. All right, flash forward. Talk about voting and talking about the squad and stuff like that. I'm telling you right now, we need to have candidates that are willing to be a one-term person, that are not trying to be lifelong careerists, that are willing to go in there for 4 years, 2 years, 6 years, whatever the term is, and absolutely light that son of a bitch on fire, to be willing to go in there and say all the truthful things and be a voice for the poor. Instead of, we got a lot of sycophants out there, bad people making excuses for them. Don't make excuses. They're a public servant. They're not your leader. They're a public servant. Treat them as such. Make demands. If they don't meet them, then guess what? They're fucking up, because their job is to represent you. If they represent big business, if they represent moneyed interest, they're not your friend. I don't care what the letter in front of their name is. And there's some people out there that get very, very sensitive about me saying these things. But the fact is that I'm telling the truth. The tail of the tape tells you everything you need to know. Every time we vote for people, if they don't sit there and put it on the line, knowing what we're up against, they're not fighting the same battle we're fighting. They're not fighting the same battle we're fighting. And so to me, this idea of organizing beyond the electoral process with the unions, working with folks like the Vermont AFL-CIO, others that are embracing class struggle unionism, etc., that is the way to go. I mean, I'm just thoroughly disgusted by this whole bill and the celebration and the slobbering. The fact is, they just start celebrating about reducing the ITT, which was a scam school, that they wrote that bill off, and I think it was like 19 billion. They're running around celebrating this stuff. Folks, There's $2 trillion in student debt that have to be cut off. They have to be gotten rid of. Old people went back to school during the great financial crisis. Tons of people are sitting there strapped with huge amounts of debt, literally strapped like huge sacks of shit on their back. This is what needs to be done. And when I see Pramila sitting there praising Biden, praising Manchin, and it makes me disgusted. See, I stay focused on what I know. I don't sit there and bleed out into these. And what they're doing is a lie. They're celebrating something that is not something to be celebrated by you and I. Trust me on that.
Thanks for watching, and make sure to tune in to Status Coup's daily live stream Monday through Thursday at 5 o'clock Eastern Time and Fridays at 4 o'clock Eastern Time.